Hey everybody, KC here. So there was an interesting story in the Wall Street Journal the other day, and it had the title, Why Gender Pronouns Are Becoming a Big Deal at Work. And let me read a little bit from the story to you. Some big business is increasingly embracing the practice of sharing individual pronouns in the workplace as part of diversity initiatives to support coworkers who may be transgender or non-binary colleagues who identify as neither male or female. A growing number of employees are adding their pronouns to everything from email signatures to Zoom profiles, often at their company's urgings. The practice, though, is far from a workplace norm and is met with puzzlement and uncertainty in some quarters as workers try to navigate this new terrain. Now listen, certainly not everybody is requiring it. Some companies are certainly not requiring it, and some companies will let people doing whatever makes them comfortable. And it's really interesting. One of the things that you see is that companies are doing this as part of sort of a broader effort to embrace and appreciate a greater diversity in terms of their employees. And it's interesting, some of this is hard to understand. And I totally get that. The story kind of takes the position that it's mostly like straight white people who have the most trouble with diversity efforts. I'm not sure that's always necessarily true. It's interesting. I was having a conversation with someone I know she's a lesbian, and she is very, very resentful of the whole notion of putting they, them as on their email signatures. And for her, and this is somebody who's a pretty liberal person, but for her, it was sort of sidestepping the process that she went through. And she's somebody who's in her 50s. And for her, declaring herself as a lesbian, coming out, that was both a major personal deal and maybe a political deal as well, small p. And for her, the whole notion of being able to just put it out there and not have to make a declaration of it, she found that really off-putting. I find that kind of interesting. I do think that for those of us who are not transgender and not non-binary, some of this stuff is hard to understand. But at the end of the day, I think the most important thing to understand is that people need to be as comfortable and made to feel as comfortable as they can in whatever their work environment happens to be. Some of this stuff is criticized in some quarters as being woke, right? Woke, which has become like the ultimate dismissal, and it's just like, they're woke. And I don't know, that word doesn't bother me all that much. I understand how it's sort of been shoehorned into one particular meaning, but to me, it's just kind of trying to be awake to the fact that, people are different, and the fact that some people have had distinct advantages because of their gender, because of the color of their skin, because of who their parents were, or where they were raised, or the schools that they were able to go to, or by the fact that they were born into a body that maybe they felt comfortable with, unlike people who are non-binary or transgender. And I think to the extent that companies are able to do this in a way that makes people feel that they can be who they are, I think this is a really positive thing. Not everybody goes the same journey. And if we're going to create a caring culture within companies where people feel valued and people feel invested in, this is part of the process. You can't just kind of segment it, right? It's important to allow people to be who they are to the greatest possible degree. Listen, my feeling about this has always been that I like to quote the words of John Lennon, whatever gets you through the night. I think that's what's really important. And it's kind of encouraging, I think, that to me, that companies are starting to try to understand this, to try to embrace this, and to use this as a moment where they can be better than they were before. Anyway, that is what's on my mind this morning. And as always, I want to hear what's on your mind.